and we consider him extremely dangerous.
Malcolm Naden is alleged to have committed a litany of crimes. Arrest warrants have been issued for the sexual assault of a Dubbo schoolgirl and the murder of 24-year-old Christy Scholes. Naden's also wanted for questioning over the disappearance of his cousin, 24-year-old Letitia Nolan.
I've got a feeling that she might be around here somewhere. This is where a car was found, just up the side of the river here.
It's 7 years since Letitia Nolan was last seen. Her car was found here by the Macquarie River in central New South Wales. And mysteriously, years later, her wallet washed up on the bank. For her dad, Mick Peet, this place is the only physical link he's got to his daughter.
How do you think he's bearing up?
He doesn't deal with it good. I see it every day, and it breaks my heart. So it hurts because I don't want to see him go through what he has to go through.
Mick's life is blighted by having to imagine his daughter's final moments, an endless churn of questions.
I'm thinking he may have committed a sex crime on my daughter. She's resisted, and I think he's murdered her and put her in the river.
And that is the last thing you want to think would have happened to your daughter.
That's the last thing I want to think, that's for sure. She was my first child. She was 24 years old, and she had 4 kids.
Nobody has more interest than you in the apprehension of Malcolm Naden. He needs to be caught, doesn't he?
Yep, he needs to be caught.
If only to give you the answers you need.
Exactly.
How have you handled this?
It's been pretty hard.
I watched the young Naden grow up here.
So this is the house?
That's the house, yeah.
Alan Nolan is Malcolm Naden's uncle. He knew him long before Naden became Australia's most wanted and watched his nephew slide into a dark and isolated world, retreating to his bedroom, shunning even his family.
There's a girl dead and another missing. When do you start to add things up and find Malcolm in the frame?
When Christy was found in the room, deceased, it's in Malcolm's room, of course.
That's the bedroom that he kept locked.
The one that he keeps locked, and the one that you don't see him leave. He was isolated in there, and, well, nobody else was allowed in there. And for some ungodly reason, he took a life in there, you know.
That was back in 2005, and Naden's been on the run ever since. Despite thousands of police hours, hundreds of officers in the field, and a $250,000 bounty on Naden's head, he's still out there.
It is very frustrating because it's so difficult, it's so remote, it's so hard to get the police out into these areas.
Assistant Commissioner Carleen York is in charge of Strikeforce Durkin.
Is it embarrassing to you that after so much time, you haven't caught him?
No, it's not embarrassing. It's a very difficult task, and that rugged bushland, he can get away and then secrete himself again. So it's a very, very difficult operation and quite different to what you would do in a suburban community.
Here in some of the roughest country in Australia, the fugitive Malcolm Naden is widely regarded as some kind of will-o'-the-wisp, able to vanish into the landscape. From time to time, he's seen here, he's seen there, he's sought everywhere, but the sightings are rarely confirmed. He has become as insubstantial as the very mist that so often shrouds this mountain wilderness. One tiny human needle in such a vast and daunting haystack. Adam, from your training, what are the key aspects of survival?
Well, you have water is one of them. Obviously, shelter and food are your three basic elements to survival.
Survival and evasion behind enemy lines are matter-of-fact basics for former Army reconnaissance and surveillance paratrooper Adam Mulcahy.
He's not going to be up high. He will be down low where the river system is, because this is where you have food, water, and you can make your shelter quite easily.
And when there's only one person?
One person, obviously, it's easier to hide with one person.
And Adam shows us how. Oh, mate, it's all up and down here, isn't it? There's not much flat land.
No, not the Barrington Tops. It's pretty steep in this country.
But there is a little hideaway. From outside, I wouldn't even have noticed there's a fire in here.
No, you can't see the fire. It's at the base of the tree. The fire's quite small. He could hear them coming, smell them coming, bring down the canopy on top of him, put out his fire. That all can happen in a matter of seconds. Someone will walk past, none the wiser.
And what are you smoking in there? Some kind of meat?
Yeah, roadkill.
You'd eat that?
You are in a survival situation, so roadkill would definitely be an option of choice for food. Preserves the meat over a longer period of time. You can sustain for 6 months having dried meat. It ends up like being beef jerky, basically.
Adam, I know you're trained for this kind of thing, but living here for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it would definitely take a toll on someone doing this all the time.
Anyone who's in a situation of long-term social isolation, what happens to them is they become increasingly aroused and tense, they become increasingly suspicious, and they often become increasingly aggressive. His satisfactions come from day-to-day survival, and every day he stays free, I suspect, is a day for him which is worthwhile and gratifying.
Police psychological profiling puts Naden in the most severe and unstable category. Forensic psychiatrist Professor Paul Mullen has spent a lifetime with some of Australia's darkest criminal minds, including the man behind the Port Arthur massacre, Martin Bryant. Looking at his behaviour before he went on the run, he was already practising for a life of isolation.